The Office of Mental Health in Albany wants to move the young patients currently being treated at the Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center to the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, which doesn't currently treat children. The decision has sparked outrage in Western New York among parents, legislators, and mental health advocates who say it's long been established that young people have special needs when it comes to mental health treatment, which is why they were segregated from the adult population to begin with. Despite objections, OMH is moving ahead with its plans to close the facility and transfer adolescent patients to the Buffalo Psychiatric Center. Joining us to discuss this situation are Dave Chuddy, and Dave is a spokesman for the Save Our Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center. He's also a social worker. And Allison Scanlon is a patient advocate affiliated with Save Our Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center. She also happens to be the parent of an adult child who graduated from the facility, and she credits CPC with saving her family. Dave and Allison, welcome to the Capitol Press Room.
Thank you very much.
Dave, what are the reasons that OMH is going through this move?
I know, even, hearing again for the countless time you read, what they're doing, it's flabbergasting to us. It makes absolutely no sense. I retired after 32 years with the state, and so sometimes they do crazy things that defy logic. Typically, a facility would need to be, have difficulties, be in trouble, and those are the type of places the state wants to maybe close or merge. But the Western New York Children's Psych Center is the highest-rated psychiatric facility in New York State for both adults and kids. Makes absolutely no sense.
Well, what are the reasons that OMH is giving for the move? They must be explaining why they've decided to do this.
They're posing that there's going to be administrative savings by closing the building in West Seneca and moving these kids into an existing building in the adult facility in the city of Buffalo.
So it's a financial decision on the part of the state.
Yes, which we question, and those of us that have worked for the state, those savings typically don't occur. But, Susan, even if they did, the reason they're saying they need to do this is there's this greater need for community supports in the community. What they're doing then is they're cutting back on services to the kids who need it most intensely by moving them out of this residential facility that by every metric is the best in the state. And they have the highest success rate and the lowest readmission rate out of any facility in the state. This saves the state dollars down the road. And you referred to that center, you mentioned adolescent kids. There's kids as young as 4 and 5 years old that come to the Children's Psychiatric Center. There's adolescents, yes, but there's very young kids, and a good number of them have been traumatized by adults. So when families heard about you're moving these kids back to Buffalo, absolute horror.
What we're going to do, Dave, is take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation about the Children's Psych Center and meet Allison Scanlon, who's a parent of a child who graduated from the facility. You're listening to the Capitol Press Room. Today, we're talking about a decision by the Office of Mental Health in Albany to move the young patients, the kids and adolescents currently being treated at the Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center to the Buffalo Psychiatric Center. And Dave Chuddy, before we get to Allison, does the Buffalo Psychiatric Center currently serve children or not?
Oh, no. Kids were moved out of there. The reason the Children's Psych Center exists today is because as a result of, clinical and educational studies, it was determined well over 50 years ago, kids need special treatment, a special approach. They were actually moved out of the Buffalo Psychiatric Center around 1970 when the Children's Psych Center was built. It was specially designed just to treat seriously traumatized kids.
Allison, when did your son first come to the center? And tell us also about the attempts you made to treat his acute mental health issues prior to finding the center.
My son was in and out of many different facilities that will kind of hold children to get them stabilized and then return them to their homes. They're like quick fixes. They're like a place that we can put our children to keep them safe while they're going through episodes or trauma. My son had a very difficult time finding a child psychologist and a child psychiatrist.
Do you mind me asking what was going on with your son? The diagnosis?
He has mild mental retardation. He has pervasive development disorder. He has ADD, ADHD, and he has bipolar. So with a combination of those, it was very difficult to find a safe place for him. He would act out. He could become violent. He could become threatening. He would become violent in the home, would break things, punch things. It was very, very difficult to get him into a facility that didn't have a waiting list. We finally had him hospitalized at a facility downtown, and he was inside that facility for 4 months waiting for an opening at the Children's Psychiatric Center. There's only 46 beds there, and we service 19 counties. So we have to wait for the availability of a bed.
So he got into the center, and you're on the record saying that it saved your family. What did they provide that the other institutions that you tried did not?
Absolutely. The other institutions, like I said, it's almost like just a holding place for them to get them stabilized so they can return home, but they're not really treating the patient for long term. Once we got our son into the Children's Psychiatric Center, it was just such a feeling of finally there's somebody there that's going to help us. My son is more of a unique situation. He was there for 2 years. They told us he would have to come back after he had a growth spurt, and then they'd have to adjust his medication. So he was actually there for 2 years and then another 1.5 years to 2 years the second time. The staff out there was absolutely amazing, and I know that the commissioner, Ann Sullivan, and the governor feel that this facility is just another facility and that infrastructure does not matter. They're on the record as stating that. And as a parent, I am totally opposed to that. I cannot believe they would make such a statement. When you walk onto that facility out in West Seneca, it is a peaceful, quiet place. It looks like an elementary school. It's all one level. It is immaculately kept. It's very, very clean. The school's there. They have a gym, a weight room, a pool, and the kids can move about there without having to worry about coming in contact with any adult patient.
All right. So let me ask Dave, how does that differ from the Buffalo Psychiatric Center where the state wants to place these children?
They want to place them in an 8-story institutional building that looks like some office building that's full of adults. They're going to take about a quarter of that building, one half of the building, the first 4 floors, and they're going to pour millions of dollars into that to put the kids in there. They say they'll have a separate elevator. They'll have a separate entrance. They're going to have a 14-foot fence wrapped around that entrance to another small building that they want to renovate as a small rec area where the kids can play. It's like a 2-acre site, and they'll be safe. The gym and the rec building there, the full-size one, which has a pool, has a full gym, has a bowling alley, is a couple hundred yards away. Now, we just got hit with our first blizzard yesterday in Buffalo. Can you imagine during a blizzard marching off a half a dozen kids, dressing them up, walking through 200 yards of snow and wind and cold on an open campus where adults are wandering, and it's right next door to a 12,000-plus student college, and to go play basketball? It's not going to happen.
So can you tell us what the medical community has actually determined regarding the needs of children with mental health issues and segregating them from the adult population? Is there actually data that suggests that it's something that's necessary?
Well, yeah, in terms of, it's the best practice. There's something about evidence-based and scientific knowledge about trauma, and most of these kids have sustained trauma as a result of some adverse childhood or adolescent experience, and that's been determined by the SUNY Trauma Institute, and the state funds that. that the key is, and this is a real key point, when mental health talks about they'll be safe, they're just talking about physical safety. They're going to have a separate entrance, a 14-foot fence. They're going to march them, from building to building to make sure none of the adults get at them or none of the kids take off. That's physical safety. That's not emotional safety. These kids need to feel they're in a perceived safe environment where hope can be sustained. And this is the thing. Susan, these kids are traumatized, but they're not stupid. And they're going to look out their window at that Strozzi building, and they're going to see 40, 50-year-old adult psychiatric patients. And where is the hope in that? We tell these kids, you come to CPC, you're going to heal. We're going to heal you. You're going to get back to your family, your neighborhood, your schools, and you can go on and live a normal life. And you're going to put them in that facility with very well-meaning staff and adults who need those services, but they're going to see those adults, and they're going to think, that's me in 20, 30 years. Where is the hope? There's no way you can duplicate the environment at CPC.
Two more questions, and we have about 45 seconds, so keep that in mind. Okay. Will there be more beds for kids at this?
No, there's supposed to be the same number of beds that we have now. And that's the latest information.
Last question. What are you hoping that my listeners do?
We're hoping they call the governor's office and say, please do not let your commissioner of mental health do this. Come and see Children's Psych Center for yourself. We can't believe the governor would go through with this if he really understood what's going on. He's a very busy man, and we think the Office of Mental Health is just really being penny-wise, pound-foolish with the lives of very traumatic, needy kids.
We're out of time. I want to thank you, Dave Chuddy, who's a spokesman for the Save Our Western New York Children's Psychiatric Center, also a spokesperson, or rather a social worker. And Allison Scanlon is a parent with the same organization. Thank you both. We appreciate your time.
Thanks very much for giving us the time.
This program is presented by WC.